So there's a little game that came out about a week or so ago called Cyberpunk 2077, and since this game has come out, it has been an absolute roller coaster of emotions, mostly with the roller coaster just falling off the track and lots of people being thrown from this roller coaster. It's something that we've been documenting a lot on this channel because I find the situation absolutely fascinating. We have never seen anything like this before. Now yesterday I of course made a video talking about the latest from the Cyberpunk 2077 situation. Make sure you guys check that out, and I released that early in the morning. But of course, since then there's been a whole bunch of more stuff that has happened. Xbox has now gotten involved with the refund situation, and I think this is very telling. And since then there's also been a new report that there's lots of internal fighting at CD Projekt Red about the Cyberpunk 2077 situation. So I basically just want to share my thoughts on the latest information that we've gotten and just talk more about this crazy situation known as Cyberpunk 2077. So if this is your first time on the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We're getting very close to 360,000 subs. Go ahead and give this video a like as well. And let's talk about the latest in the drama of Cyberpunk 2077. So yesterday, Xbox did something very interesting that if you watch my video from yesterday morning, I didn't necessarily think was going to happen in any way, shape, or form, but they are now doing this. And Xbox is now offering refunds if you purchased Cyberpunk 2077. In a tweet that went out yesterday afternoon, they said, to ensure that every player can get the experience they expect on Xbox, we will be expanding our existing refund policy to offer full refunds to anyone who purchased Cyberpunk 2077 digitally from the Microsoft Store until further notice. While we know the developers at CD Projekt Red have worked hard to ship Cyberpunk 2077 in extremely challenging circumstances, we also realize that some players have been unhappy with the current experience on older consoles. Now obviously there's a lot of interesting things to take away from this, because unlike with Sony and Cyberpunk 2077, Microsoft isn't taking it off of the Xbox Store. You could still purchase this game and, you know, buy this game if you want to do that. But if you did buy the game, you are being offered a refund. And I think this is a lot bigger than what Sony did with this situation, because you got to remember, like we talked about in yesterday's video, Sony didn't have a vested interest in Cyberpunk 2077. I'm sure they wanted the game to do well, and I'm sure they wanted the game to make them money, but at the end of the day, they didn't put any money into Cyberpunk 2077, whereas Microsoft technically did. You have to remember, when it comes to marketing of Cyberpunk, Microsoft had all the exclusive rights to do that. That's why Sony never did any presentations showcasing Cyberpunk 2077. It was only Microsoft or CD Projekt Red themselves. So Microsoft probably spent literally millions of dollars to make this game get out there, to make this game get a lot of hype around it. So they are going to be losing on a vested business venture with Cyberpunk 2077 by giving refunds back on this game and expanding their refund policy. I do think that it was the right decision from just an optics standpoint. If Sony is offering a refund, why people might be like, well, why isn't Microsoft doing it? Microsoft's supposed to be the pro-consumer company out of the two. So I think from an optics perspective, they definitely had to do something. But I do think from a business perspective, it is very interesting because they are obviously going to be losing a lot of money from investing in the promotion of Cyberpunk 2077 on the Xbox branded consoles. I don't like how Microsoft said, we also realize that some players have been unhappy with the current experience on older consoles. Drop this narrative already. Drop this narrative of older consoles, because the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X were not supposed to be out when this game came out. The game was announced in 2012. The last release date we had for it before the delay was in April of 2020, before these systems came out. I understand they're just trying to save face, but I absolutely hate this narrative because it is a false narrative, and you can see right through it if you have a brain, because you're like, okay, the game was supposed to come out when these systems were out, so how can you even factor that into the equation? So I don't like how Xbox talked about that. They should have just left that part out. But yes, obviously this is another crazy situation. Now refunds have been expanded to the Xbox Live Store. Best Buy is actually doing in-store refunds for physical versions of the game until December 21st. So the fallout from this has been absolutely massive. But there is something else that I want to highlight in this Xbox tweet, because it sort of goes into the next point that we have to talk about. And that is, they say, while we know the developers at CD Projekt Red have worked hard to ship Cyberpunk 2077 in extremely challenging circumstances. Well, now there's a lot of internal fighting going on at CD Projekt Red about this game, and that's where things, wow, they just get absolutely crazy. So Jason Schreier, my best friend who blocked me on Twitter, he doesn't really like me. And I mean, I don't know why. I just, I called him out on a few things that I thought were very strange about some of his tweets. And instead of, talking in a conversation, he just blocked me. But, at the end of the day, I don't really care. It's no big deal to me. But Jason Schreier, I think he does good work sometimes. And his latest article over on Bloomberg was a very well done article talking about the Cyberpunk 2077 situation and basically in-house fighting at CD Projekt Red right now. I'll have a link to it in the description box down below if you want to check out his full article. But one of the things I want to highlight from this is just this internal discussion that's happening now, because obviously the game isn't just going to go away. They're obviously working on patches and things like that, which is going to cause this crunch that we talk about so much in the industry. And while I'm not going to get into the crunch aspect of things, because that's really a topic for a whole nother day, what actually is crunch beyond having to work your normal job, if you're getting compensated, how much crunch is there? There's a lot. It's not a black and white situation in my opinion, but Jason is definitely anti-crunch when it comes to the video game industry, so it kind of has that slant to it, but I still think he did a good job with this article. But obviously there's a lot of internal questions happening right now at CD Projekt Red, because while it's not going to necessarily affect the higher ups in the company, yes, from a business perspective it will, but and a money perspective, but at the end of the day, like, their name isn't necessarily getting attached to any of this. The CD Projekt Red people who actually worked on the game are the ones that are going to be impacted by this the most, because now they're having to fix this game that probably should not have shipped in the first place. In this article, Jason says that one employee asked the board why it said in January that the game was complete and playable when that wasn't true, to which the board answered that it would take responsibility. Another developer asked whether CD Projekt Red's directors felt it was hypocritical to make a game about corporate exploitation while expecting their employees to work overtime. The response was vague and non-committal. Like, that's some balls with this. But you know what? I completely understand why these CD Projekt Red developers and workers are saying things like this, because you got to remember something here. These people have been working on this game for roughly 8 years. This game was announced back in 2012 as coming out and being this huge thing. So when imagine you work on something for 8 years and you don't have control necessarily of what ends up happening with that product. You work on this, you try to make it as good as possible, but at the end of the day, it's not your decision when this game is going to launch. It's not your decision when this game is ready. It's some stockholders' decision. It's some corporate bigwigs' decision about when they're going to release the game. So you're now attached to this game. Your body of work, your 8 years is now attached to this game. And if somebody wants to leave CD Projekt Red and go to a different company, and the company is like, oh, okay, well, where'd you work? Worked at CD Projekt Red. Ooh, did you do Cyberpunk? Yeah, I might have. Oh, the position's been filled. Like, it's not a good look for these people. So I think this in-house mutiny is a very good thing. Obviously, Cyberpunk was released to be released before the holiday season. This game should have been delayed until like April. And I think if it was delayed until April, if they had a few more months to figure out all these bugs, all these issues that were in the game, and there was more transparency with this game, none of this would have happened. I honestly feel like none of this would have happened. There would have been some chirps about, oh, this game isn't quite what I thought it would, but at its core, the game isn't necessarily bad. I still don't think it's a genre-defining game. It really feels like a standard open world experience with a unique setting, and there's really not a whole lot that it does new, but I still think at its core, it's a solid experience. So if they would have delayed this game and just swallowed their pride, yes, you're not going to make that Christmas money, but you know what? Your stock rating isn't going to go in the toilet either, and you're not going to have to deal with all this bullshit when it comes to refunds and things like this if you just would have been patient. These investors, these bigwigs at these companies saw the short-term goal here, the short-term goal of making as much money as possible on Cyberpunk 2077 by getting it out before the holiday 2020 season, because games are selling well in this pandemic. Look at Animal Crossing. It sold like 1 billion freaking copies, so they wanted to get in on some of that piece of the pie, but they did not realize that the long-term effects were going to be extremely detrimental. And now CD Projekt Red is like up there with EA as far as company trust is concerned. If anything, I think EA is a more trustworthy company, because yeah, they do a lot of shady shit, but at least they tell you about the shady stuff. They're like, yeah, we're scumbags, but I mean, they own it. If you own that you're a scumbag, like, that's one thing, but to sit there and try to act like the nice person, to try to act like the pro-consumer person, but really deep down inside be the scumbag and then be exposed for being the scumbag, is way worse and is way worse for your optics, and it's just way worse for you as a company. So CD Projekt Red, Cyberpunk 2077, it's the biggest gaming disaster of all time, and I really think it's going to cause, you know, not just ripples, but waves through the video game industry. And hopefully this situation allows companies to open their eyes to other things happening within the video game industry. Hopefully this will allow companies to realize that short-term goal doesn't mean shit if in the long term you look like absolute assholes coming out of this situation. And now that's what CD Projekt Red and their higher ups are looking like with this, and the long-term effects are going to be very detrimental. So I just wanted to give you guys the latest information. I know some of you guys are absolutely sick and tired of hearing about this, but there is a contingent of you guys that absolutely love hearing about this. So once again, why are you booing me? I was right. You know, I always have to say that because I kind of called it, people. I kind of called it. But let me know in the comment section down below what you think of this whole latest fiasco. If you're an Xbox player, did you get a refund? Personally, I'm not going to ask for a refund. Like, you know, it's pointless to me. I've obviously made my money back just talking about my experience with the game and the game itself. So, you know, take my $60 or whatever the hell, I think it was 60 bucks. Take my 60 bucks, enjoy that 60 bucks because you have a lot bigger fish to fry right now and bigger problems to worry about than my $60. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Check out other videos on the channel as well. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Later.